This conference will now be recorded.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda items, the approval of minutes, statement of bills, and appointment of Joseph Woodbury to the CPPS board, who is with us this evening.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to accept the consent agenda items.
A second. Councilman Shriver made the motion. Councilman Adcox made the second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Mullen,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Adcox.
Yes. Thank you. And welcome to the CPPS board. Thank you for serving.
Thank you.
Item number 2 on the agenda is requests or comments from the public. If we have anyone who wants to share with us this evening, please just remember you'll have 3 minutes. You'll state your name and address, and then I'll give you a little signal when it's time to start wrapping up. Okay, well, we'll move right along.
Wow.
Item number 3 already. Consider a change order from McConnell and Associates to add street repairs on 110th Street and to construct a concrete turnaround on Kansas Avenue as part of their current Kansas Avenue repair in place contract.
Mayor, thank you. Mayor, Council, for your just point of reference here, this is the area we're talking about specific to the concrete improvement in this change order. I'll give you a little background on this. Number 3 is that when the bid package was let, we had had several discussions, and I even mentioned to this group probably more than once, the expectation was that there was going to be concrete at that location as part of a turnaround. And then as the bid package was let, the engineers, again, no blame here, they just researched it and they felt that the concrete added to the base of the road, which is the whole road is going to have this concrete added into the base, and the 6 inches of asphalt would adequately support such as a prime van, UPS van, that sort of thing. And we might not have considered fully the weight of a trash truck, a fire truck, those kinds of things, or some other utility vehicle that might go down that way. This was really driven by residents in that area, because what is happening is we're getting down to this end, which is the very west end. There's 300 more feet of road that the city has past this tree line. And what is happening is down that way. And that is an asphalt road surface, if you will, but it's not as thick as any road that we might have. You might imagine a loaded trash truck that routinely going down there, which has no purpose. It's also another problem just back to this property on the north side that is a home where there was a fire and the home is no longer there, but the driveway is there, and they've been using that. So we by the unfortunate design here is the consequences. We've been using private property to turn around our trash trucks. If there's a fire vehicle, they have to go on private property. So that gives you the background of why the discussion of this kind of hammerhead turnaround, if you will. If you think of a hammer, you can make a 3-point turn there. There's quite a bit of right-of-way that goes into this driveway that's boxed in there. And we felt that was probably the best place to reinforce with concrete that particular area. Back to the asphalt. The asphalt, 6 inches, long story short, it was also suggested that we add another 2 inches of asphalt on there, so it would be a total of 8 inches. But it would raise that portion of the road. I just didn't think that was a great design. So at the staff level, we decided to ask for that concrete be placed in there for longevity and support of these particular vehicles. Think of a large vehicle, multi-tandem, dualies, those sorts of things, weighted, doing turn on asphalt on a pretty regular basis. That would heave But that's one thing, we have to be repairing that quite a long time. So we should do it right currently. So in a sense that, that should add about $26,000, a little over to the, that particular project. But that will be somewhat offset because they will not be pouring that, surfacing that 6 inches of asphalt and that particular base in the same way. And to your question earlier, Mayor, is that when they finalize the bill, it's done by unit pricing. Therefore, the asphalt piece will be less because there'll be less square yards for this particular piece. So this concrete piece was, I talked about it originally. I really thought it was the best idea. Therefore, I've asked the contractors to do the work to make this change. In addition to that, they will be on 110th Street doing the cross drain. More inspection that we did of what the work is needed there. We looked at 110th Street, and that street specifically hasn't been surfaced in quite a long time. It has a similar character to Kansas Avenue. There's no mobilization there in the sense from the contractor that they can do a 2-inch mill and overlay, and it's very inexpensive, and they can do it while they're there. So in the same time frame of this Kansas Avenue project, we can resurface the entire road and reinforce the south end. At the south end, there's some gravel mixed in with the blacktop that you see there. Some of that gravel area it's used quite frequently. Once you get down in there as another turnaround, they will do some extra work in that area and reinforce that, not quite to the level that we can get at on Kansas Avenue. So in addition, those two projects together, this is a total of $48,724.30. We'll complete the entire additional road that we did floor drill, so we know there's a good base there. We have floor for that, so that has been over the years. Tip seal on a couple of occasions. You can see that the system floor there. And so we knew that the 2-inch mill and overlay was probably the best product for us. It's the most expensive, and it's going to last 10, 12 years as long as we make it. So for that amount, we get the concrete improvement, we get the turnaround at the end of 110th Street, and we get the resurfacing of the entire 110th Street and cleaning up those edges. With that, we recommend approval.
What happens to the 3 streets that merge where the stop sign's laying down in the ditch?
There's a big hole there, and that's part of that drainage, which is the problem. And that's collapsed.
So that's going to be fixed with this extra 48,000?
Yeah, absolutely. So from Edwardsville Drive 110, right, that kind of curve right there. So we're going to come down, that entire area will be resurfaced. You've got that little kind of split right there. So you'll have that little stretch up to the drain, past the Public Works building, and then we'll 110th and Kansas, and the whole area will be redone.
You do know that there's concrete under that, where the 2 roads come together. That's concrete all the way up underneath the asphalt. Okay.
Yeah,
About 6 inches or so.
there wasn't, as you got onto 110th Street south of that cross drain.
Right.
That's collapsed. So,
Yeah.
but yes, back up, there's a good surface, quite frankly. And I think
Yeah.
when we looked at that surface was in good condition. In other words, they put an asphalt surface over the concrete that was existing as part of the old state road.
Anyone have any questions or?
I think we did that in 09.
Yeah, there has been some efforts
Yeah.
in my time to resurface that road.
So if there are no questions or comments, I'll wait to hear a motion if we have one regarding item 3, which is the adding the change order from McConnell and Associates.
I'll make the motion to approve item number 3 for the change order from McConnell and Associates.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Bishop, a second from Councilman Mullen. Will the clerk please call roll?
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Block,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Echo,
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 4, here a presentation regarding the Town Center Municipal Complex project.
Break the law.
Mayor, we'll call on our team for facilities, which you've met several times.
Yep.
And I was involved in the lead. And our architect firm, Williams. And we'll just turn it over to you. How's that?
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, it's good to be back here with you again to provide an update on the work that we've done since we last presented to you all in March. We've met a couple times with the mayor and city manager and our construction team and design partners to continue progress on basically validating the program that we've had an outline for. Really digging into the square footages, the blocking plan, the site plan a little bit further in an effort to get enough information that our construction partners with Vogel Anderson could put some budgetary numbers together. So that's what we'll kind of walk through today. We'll give you a recap of our process, some more detail in the program validation, the evolution of our site concepts, blocking plans, and then Vogel in with our budget numbers. So we just like to revisit our guiding principles because we always like to have this in the back of our mind as we're making decisions to move forward. What are we creating for the city of Edwardsville, this public facility and campus intended for the public? Initiating this heart of Edwardsville, always being mindful of economic stewardship, creating a facility that the community will be proud of, always focusing on well-being of the staff and critical nature of the services being provided in this facility. And then connectivity within this campus approach. So again, we've identified the need, right? We've gone through the existing facilities. We know that there is, a need here to create a facility for the services that you all provide. So just to recap our process of the information gathering, evaluating the existing facilities, validating the program, coming up with block and concept planning, and then the budget. So since we've seen you last, we've actually put more square footage numbers to all of the program elements and sort of our three major categories of program broken down by city hall and city administrative functions, police department facilities, and then fire station facilities. And there's some overlap within each of these departments that you'll see when we get to the blocking plans, that we've tried to make sure that we're being efficient with use of space, not having duplication of spaces that could be shared or combined. So ultimately, this is the kind of our recommendation for the square footage for each of these functions, incorporating all of these important things underneath each category. So just, you're not meant to read this, but this is just to show you the level of detail that we went to get to those numbers. So each category is broken down into, conference room, offices, support space, all the things that you need to program into a building to make sure that we're not missing anything and that we're thinking through every function and every office and every staff person that will be part of this building. So this just gives you a breakdown of those spaces that we've gone through in detail with each department.
Ellen, can you go back one real quick?
Sure.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Got it. So this is police department, police support space, fire program, and then fire support space. So we're grossing about 39,000 square feet, and that's including some shared support space. That's including, factors that we have to put on for kind of the unknowns right now, which is mechanical space and structural space, circulation space. So that's, there's, factors that go into that we regularly, fine tune as the blocking plan develops. So then the site concept really, this will give you just a little bit of diagrams to get to how our site plan has evolved. And really these kind of axis connections between Blake Street and between the kind of the north-south connector, how people are arriving at this site and sort of those view corridors as you're coming into the site are things that we took into consideration. Kind of outlining different zones for public, secure, kind of a combined intermediate zone, and then eventually a green space or a park that could be part of this site development. And again, showing just kind of where those intersection of arrival and view corridors kind of come together at that peak. So this is how the building footprint has evolved from the last iteration that you all saw. Really identifying public parking on the south side of the site, secure parking for PD patrol and personal vehicles, kind of on the west side of the site, and then the fire apparatus response apron kind of angled out at the corner, and then showing potential for green space to develop on that peak at the east side of the site. Potential future development area where the existing fire station is now. That's another point of conversation that we can discuss further, what that existing fire station might want to be in the future and what that green space between the parking and the existing fire station could develop to be. Lots of potential for really creating this campus feel in this heart of Edwardsville. So then we go into the blocking diagram. So this kind of breaks apart the different functions that we've talked about that are included in the program: city, civic, fire, police, and how they kind of all come together in this Venn diagram approach, and showing how those different functions can overlap, what can be shared, what really needs to be separate, and creating these zones of secure and public, and using the building to help define that. And you'll see kind of how that gets divided in the footprint of the plan. No, I didn't know if there was a laser pointer. But essentially, you've got the police department kind of on the bottom right corner of the plan. You've got the fire department on the bottom left corner of the plan, and then all of the city functions, kind of the public facing elements, which include the council / courtroom, public library, computer lab functions that could overlap as public meeting space, really utilizing those public facing functions on the south side of the plan. And then the city administrative services sort of is the hub, sort of in the middle of all of these functions. There's some shared amenities between police and fire, including a fitness area and a shared training facility that could also be a hardened shelter room that could be used for all staff in the building to have a secure place to go in the event of extreme weather. And then this, again, not meant to read all of this, but just showing you the level of detail that went into the blocking plans, making sure that we accounted for all those program elements in the plan, and thinking through security, thinking through adjacencies, and all of the elements that go into creating this plan. Departmental separation, secure entries, public entries are all kind of identified here. And just kind of going through each department. So fire station blocking plan, city blocking plan, and the police blocking plan. Again, just to show you the level of detail that went into what Vogel Anderson has provided some budget for. So with that, if anybody has any questions on the plan, you can go back to it, but I'll turn it over to Vogel Anderson to kind of review how they came up with our current budget numbers.
Ellen, one question.
Yes.
Can you go back 3 slides? I think it's the third one more. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah, that, you see where it says courtroom council?
Uh-huh.
Is it the public gonna have to come in down in the middle of the building, walk through the computer lab and the computer room and all of us into the council chamber?
There could be a secondary entrance that's closer to the courtroom. We haven't designed the entire building, right, with all of the complete entrances and secure line, but there could be another secondary entrance. If you wanted to close down sort of all of the building except for council, you could provide another means of access up to the top part of the plan.
Thanks.
I had one question. Sorry, could you go to the next slide? So the Sally Port, will all the police cars be covered?
So the Sally Port is really just for bringing in potential suspects So it would have drive-through access. You would drive the police vehicle in with the suspect, unload that person into the detention area, and then the secure exit out of the Sally Port. So it's not meant to store vehicles.
Okay.
It's a drop-off zone, a secure drop-off zone for suspects.
So where would they park their cars?
So if I go back to the site plan, so see where it says secure gates. So that parking area down there is secured by gates and fencing. And there could be potential for future covered parking sort of in the island there, the island of I can start over here and just point. Like right here, you could potentially do a covered parking area. That's not included in the current budget, but that's something that we can plan for, to be able to cover all the patrol vehicles there.
Okay.
In a secure lot.
Thank you.
So I'm Roger Summers with Foley Anderson. Some of you have seen me before. I'll introduce my partner Greg, who did the heavy lifting and put the numbers together. But I kind of wanted to quantify where we are in the process. We've gone through a bunch of these things, got to this stage, and everybody sees the design, the reactions, ooh, and they see the numbers as ooh. So we're about to hit that stage. So you know, our goal as Ellen and Finkel Williams, their concept is to give the city everything that the city says they want and need in their facilities. So our role at this point is, based on where we're at today, this is what we see as the cost for what you've told us you want today. This is a milestone on the trail. This is not a bid. This is not a final answer. This is based on this initial design concept, market conditions, all those things. This is where we think that cost is today. And then we'll work on it as the design, the budget, the funds, the things that you want and tell us you need evolve. That number will evolve to make sure that we get you a project at the end of the day that's get you all you want and is affordable. But I'll introduce my partner, Greg Harrelson. He's president of the company, but he also leads all of our estimating and pre-construction work, especially on exercises like this. So I won't speak to his process. I'll let him tell you how he got the answer, but I'll turn it over to Greg.
So here it is, just put it right up there for you.
I can move it back.
Greg Harrelson, Mayor and Council, thanks for having us this evening. Greg Harrelson, Fogel Anderson Construction. So let's talk about the concept here. First of all, the word concept is used a lot. So keep in mind, the process is, I think the Williams goes away, they listen to what they think you want, they go away and do a concept plan. The goal is to give some budget number to that concept plan to determine if you want to keep going. So we don't spend a lot of your money going through very specific plans that you say, well, I don't like that, I want to do that over, then we back up and start over again. So our goal here is to give you some budget along parallel with the concept so that you determine, do I like what I see, do we want to keep going and spending dollars on that? And is it also fit the needs that we have relative to police, city services, fire, those things. So those are, it's all kind of a general approach here to what you want, what you need, and then of course the budget. So you'll notice that this at the top is called estimate of probable cost. So our goal is not to give you a price, it's to predict with some level of certainty what would this building, were it continued to be designed and refined, what's the most likely outcome of that in the process, what would it cost? So we along the way can make changes to the design or make minor adjustments. We don't make any changes to design, but we can help give feedback along the way as changes occur, so that we can then appear before you again and say, here's where we are now, here's where we think the outcome will be based on those changes. So it really is a process, and so this is the first day for you, relatively speaking, as it pertains to the cost. So again, it is an estimate, not a price. So you can see estimate of probable cost. I would draw your attention to the left side where it says assignable areas A through J. There were program areas that Ellen presented earlier. Those areas parallel the program areas that you saw in that report. So if you wanted to go back and you wanted to look at what was included in item B, municipal court, council chambers, you could go back to that report B and see what was contained in that area. And so we actually looked at those areas and the uses to determine what would be the approximate cost of those various areas. You'll see that each area has a different unit cost. So this is really a multi-service, multi-use building. So it is a little different in that respect. When we look at trying to put an estimate to this particular building, ideally you would like to say, well, we just take off all of the wall areas and the roof area and the flooring and the windows and all those things, and you put a price to that. So we really don't have that here yet. This is really a concept plan. So our means to determine what's the likely outcome of this project would be to find a similar project that we know of in use and in size that we could say that's similar to what we already have and what we have done. So we look for those things in our catalog of projects that we have, and we pull those forward and bring those unit prices to bear in this report. And then we also look, well, that project didn't have a fire station. How much did the fire station cost? So we have some of that data as well. Put that together. There also, I would say, there is some efficiency in this particular building because you do have areas that touch one another. There is overlap with shared areas. And so there is some efficiency in that for that reason. So in other words, if you were to go build a freestanding fire station, probably it would cost more than what we have in this square footage amount. It would cost more because it would have to stand alone. It would not have some of those shared services that you would have in this building, which is the beauty of the multi-use building. So it's fairly efficient in that respect. So as you go down through the report, you'll see the various areas, and you'll notice the square footages of each one of those areas. Those also are the same square footages that are in Ellen's program area report. And you'll see the square footage at the bottom, very, very bottom bold, 39,296 square feet. So that's the total approximate area of building that we would look at. Would also bring you to item J. Item J, horizontal construction site. That is not one of the program areas in Ellen's list. I inserted that one at the end because I thought, well, the building is the building, and in our experience, the site is the thing that has the most variability. There's things that we don't know. What soil type do you have? We are pretty sure that it's what it is, but there's still a lot to be determined there. So I pulled that item out as a separate item and included in horizontal construction site for things like asphalt parking lot, the security fencing that was referenced earlier, site lighting, earthwork, concrete sidewalks and curbs, those kinds of things. That's the stuff, everything outside the walls of the building. So we have that as one of the items. In this case, we looked at those various areas. They all have, as you can see, different unit costs. Municipal court council chambers is the highest, around $550 a square foot, and fire department around $500. So those are the two highs, and then there are other areas that are a little less expensive in the $325 square foot, $300 for the shared police fire. So all in all, at the bottom, what you'll see, project construction budget, and we have you on that word budget, 39,296. The aggregate square footage cost for the whole project, $473 per square foot. That total, keep in mind, as I would strongly suggest at this stage, at the concept level, that you have some contingency, because there's still some variability here. There's still some level of predictability that we'd say, we feel pretty good, but we should share contingency just as it pertains to what it would cost in the final analysis. So you can see that the second line up in the bottom suggested contingency. So that 18,593,000 contains a 10% contingency. Now keep in mind, as the design makes additional progress and we get better at predicting the exact cost of some of those items, that contingency would go down. So At the next report, perhaps when we've got more detail, that contingency might go down to 8%, and then it might go down to 5%. And when we get to the final design, it might go to 3%. So it would go down each time and reduce. So at this stage, without the more specific detail that really you need in order to get the accuracy, we suggest that we throw a contingency in there just as it pertains to what the final outcome might be. So that's kind of the process. So what we do, we look for similar projects that we have similar to this, and we try to come up with unit prices. My opinion is the best predictor of what something is going to cost is what it has cost. So we try to look for projects we have that are similar to this and use those unit costs in preparation for this report. So we also have some fire stations, and in this case, construction inflation now is awful. I mean, it's just going to go through the roof. So really the stuff that we had even 2 years ago, we can rely on that a little, but even those prices now are in today's dollars, they're old. So we have to look at a combination of things we had in the past, inflate those a little bit to today or to these dollars, which would be probably 26. And think about what that's going to cost when we get down the track a little further down the track. So in concert with that, we went online, we looked at what are current fire stations costing today, what do some of the ones that are currently being constructed, look at those unit costs. So we kind of looked at those as well. That's how we came up with this data. So it's a perfect? No way, it's not perfect, but we think it's pretty close to what you might expect were we to build this particular project and to continue working on it. So that's it.
Very quickly, could you speak to the note? You mentioned contingency,
Yeah.
maybe the escalating that a little bit, but there's that note there.
Yeah. So at the bottom, you'll note, I think you maybe have a copy of this. Budget is for construction only, does not include soft costs such as design fees, engineering, traffic studies, permits, financing, real estate taxes, or furniture, fixtures, and equipment, FF&E. You'll hear that a lot, FF&E. FF&E are the things, that's probably the biggest cost of those items, you might guess. That's things like furniture, supplies for fire, computers, those kind of things that might be necessary to furnish this building. So those items would not be covered in that cost. So there'd be additional costs to the city, and maybe some of those can be used from current facilities. I'm not sure what your catalog of furniture and those kinds of things are. So maybe some of those can be brought over, maybe not. But this cost does not include that. So, okay.
Does it include like wiring inside for internet act, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All wire, I mean, all the in building infrastructure is there.
Yeah, it's a budget. So when you start talking about specific things that are in that, there's some projects that probably had raceways and then didn't have the low voltage cabling, and some that did. So, well, that's probably something that's got to be a little more defined once we get the design, as the design develops and identify that more clearly. So,
And then on these views, do you have an elevation views of it, like, or what building materials are what it's gonna look like if you're standing there looking at it?
Not yet with these concept plans, but if we all feel comfortable that this is a direction that we want to continue to design, that's our next step, is to flesh out more of a aesthetic design for this, including building elevation.
And to expand on that, I think if I'm correct, that with this, they're fulfilling their contract, and that would be the next piece of that. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And so that would be something, if we decide to go forward, we'll have to engage them to do that next piece.
I have something a little bit off the wall. Somebody asked me this, that our post office is a mess. I mean, it's a mess. They said, why don't you ask your congresswoman we have, see if the federal government will want to move that and share, some of the cost of this, because it'd keep people from crossing the railroad tracks for one, to be safer. But I don't know if you ever had any experience with that?
shared municipal project. I don't know. No, I haven't.
I haven't either personally, but I'd be curious to ask some of my colleagues if they've done anything like that from a shared, like government type of, facility where you have to go in with the federal government and local government here to.
Maybe kick in $5 million, man, you know, that might be.
Be a tenant in your building.
You
Yeah.
can't even get them to put stamps in this post office.
That's true.
I had suggested that several times in the last 5 years, that we need something done with our postal service down here. If you need anything, you gotta go to Bonner or Wyandotte West. It's just, I think that needs to be an integral part of this, but that's my opinion, so.
Well, I think the word of caution is they have to be interested in renting something from us, and we have to build it. So, I think it-
Well, it could be rented a lot better than the building they're in right now, because that thing is a death trap.
Wait till it collapses.
I think the tricky part of that is we wouldn't have any control of it. There's no guarantee that they wouldn't run a unprofessional looking building right at the entrance of our new professional municipal building. And so there's just still, we wouldn't have accountability over the federal government, but I do like the idea of looking at other financial assistance and anything that might be, some creative ideas for that I think is worth looking into for sure.
Any specific questions on this budget range presentation piece of it?
No, I like, the budget looks pretty good to me. I'm with Margaret. I think we need to think about putting canopies out there for vehicles. I think that needs to be in the initial plans and not something you look at later. I think you should take care of that now. When you look at the bills and see the insurance deductor we're paying right now for the hailstorms.
That's something that we could easily incorporate as the budget allows.
And we, could you talk a little bit about the finance piece of the budget note at the bottom, the FFE? I know that that's kind of another contingency that we needed to just have the information, and I know that's probably a very fluctuating number, but when we're looking at the overall finance of the project, that's some information that we'll need to take into account as well.
So I don't know why, I don't have much information on that, except I have heard numbers in the 15 to 20% range-ish for FF&E for a building of this size. That's a ballpark guess. I haven't done no inventory of your current, needs, what you currently own, what you don't own, what's too old to take over. So it's probably a 15 to 20% add, what I've heard, for those items. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and so the 18 and a half is for an empty building.
Correct.
Primarily, and then of course, whatever we're buying new, that will add to the overall budget.
But it would be a completed building. It's just it's mostly those loose, think of things that are loose, that are not tied to the building. That's a pretty good definition.
So around like 22, 23 million
Ish, yeah.
ish.
Yep. Correct. I would tell you this too, keep in mind, when we come together and we try to get an estimate, we have no incentive for making it too low, for making it too high. In fact, we're trying to predict what we think it will cost. So that's our job. We're hired to do that. So this is not something that we thought, what's a strategy here relative to any price. This is just telling you what we think it will cost. That's our job. We're acting as your agent, so we're telling you this is a likely outcome. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
presentation, the information. That's a lot of information. We really appreciate you being here tonight to share. And I think a lot of our questions will probably come here in a little bit if we talk about finance pieces and give the council time to kind of mull this information over. It's a lot at once.
Thank you. Mayor, I'm going to handle this next piece of it, and it's going to feel a little watered down, and that's purposeful. I instilled over the last several weeks that this was go, no go. This is the decision time for you to spend 18 to 21 million like that. There's no way I'm going to put you in that position. I'm glad you read that. In the sense that we can't stand before you today without real detailed plans of how we're going to move forward, okay? But we had to instill a message of urgency because there's one piece of this that I think the council is fairly united on, is that this needs to go before the public for a vote, okay? And that means November. If you think about political campaigns, they start well in advance of the election, and there's a reason: name recognition, get your ideas out there, right? This is how they do. So this is the same thing. This is a very short window for us as staff. We have to have a number of strategies, that sort of thing, put in place so that we can put together an educational packet that you can then go out and campaign to the public about support for this particular project. Because certainly you're not going to say yes for something you don't support. So in a sense, what we're doing here is, this is more of a question and answer forum, in the sense to give you some what we know, what we want to know, and then the ask is very simple. I'm not asking you to spend $18 to $22 million today, be irresponsible. But what I'm going to ask you to do is join me and the staff and this team that you just heard from, and our bond counsel and our financial advisor at a work session in the next coming days. There's been some suggestion maybe next Monday as a somewhat of a retreat, if that works. There may be some other scheduling if there's conflicts, that sort of thing. But we need to target before the next meeting. I wasn't keen on the idea of backing this up to a council meeting. And the reason is, we always feel this pressure to get through these very quickly and then join in the regular session. So if we could have a special session, that would be my ask of the mayor, if she could call that and then coordinate whatever it is, the material that we would need. We would, the staff would get all that together over the next few days, and then hopefully scheduling wise, between next Monday and sometime next week, we would be prepared to give you choices, some informed material that, so you can make a decision on, that's not a snap $22 million decision. It may be that, but you can say that you've taken your time and you've considered all the material and what options that we have at our disposal. Okay, so that'll be our ask. Okay, so let's get into this. Again, a little watery. It's meant to be that way, and I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight, other than if you would help us, help you guys. Let's get together. Let's have a more detailed drill down into these things in a little different setting, if we could. Okay, and I think, Mayor, that's been your approach on several complex items, so I thought maybe that would be a good idea. Okay. So what we know, there's a lot of things we know about this thing. We are farther than we've ever been, but we've been here twice. We've taken one more step than we ever have. We've spent some money, but we know from all of this, the purpose of this particular building, and this one particularly by design, is sharing of resources and cost-effective building, right? It's the I wouldn't say the cheapest, but it's the lowest price option that we have, even at this 18 to 22 million. Okay, so the purpose is to collectively put all of our resources on a campus, and that we share a number of things: meeting spaces, fitness centers, those sorts of things. And there's this somewhat of a hub. There's substantially more public engagement area than we have currently or anywhere. And I think that's a big positive for this particular, the purpose of this building is to enhance the public engagement piece. The need for the building, there is no debate about the need for this building or some form of a new building that houses police, fire, administrative services, right? It only excludes park and rec and public works, but they have a different function than all of those ones that I have named, and they would have a building designed specifically for them and their equipment. But there's no doubt that there's a need. We've done this twice. You've spent money investing in that, you recognize the need, and we went and studied, and we said, okay, based on these professional reports that we have, there's an absolute need. So that doesn't go away, okay? The governing body supports a new building, and how we know that is we've discussed it for months and months. This, again, is the second time we've approached this idea. We've spent money on it, and there again, through your support from the financial piece, you recognize the need, and you know that it has a good purpose. The location of the new building, town center, is purposely stated. Okay? It's looked at, and I just from the notes and being involved in these meetings, the previous administration really wanted to define that this is not only a public engagement piece, but it's really becomes the core of the community in some ways. And so we've shown that we had the old grocery store. We invested in that particular demolition, reclamation of some of the property and doing some of that, acquiring that property. We've done that with the purpose of we want to have this town center located right here on this property that we own and is seen as, for a number of years, kind of the core community, if you will. So now what we know through this advanced blocking, that's the way I'm defining it, we know the layout, the square footage of the building that we're proposing. Okay, for the first time, we really honed down. It's still somewhat of a flat surface. We don't have the question that was posed. We don't have that kind of design that's vertical and horizontal, and we can see it. And it's tangible to us in a picture, but we're very, very close. Okay, that conceptual design is the next piece. But now we know the square footage, and that leads us to the next piece, which is as far as we've been, is the projected budget range. Remember, he said several times this is not a price. Okay, we have this budget range that includes a 10% contingency at the 18 to about 22 million. That is of no surprise to this group. We've talked about it. We use the standard $500 a square foot, 40,000 square foot building, right? We're at 20 million. Right? Then he talked about the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Those are the hard and soft cost after the construction building, right? And that we knew those things were going to be in there. Therefore, the range is what's important. And what he kind of pointed out is that budget range with the 10% contingency, as we hone in on the details of this building, piece of this can lower, right? That particular piece can be lower. We can move into a 5% contingency or something the farther along we get. So you're talking about when you're going to commit funds to, say, for example, the FFEs, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, that you will have a better understanding of, is it 1 million? Is it 4 million? We haven't done inventory here about what can be recycled, those sorts of things. So we're a step or more farther along than we have been. This is where it's at. So as part of this whole process, staff, and as you've been apprised as well, we know what our existing funding sources are that are available to us. We deal with them all the time. It's our budget. It's where we generate our revenue from. Those sources are there. So there's no surprises out there in the sense of, do we have to do something special or unique? We know what's available to us. We also know the statutory or legal authority that we have related to buildings and in the financing related to specifically, constructing beyond public safety buildings, this administrative building and those sorts of things. This is good to know because we can kind of formulate a plan around those, so we know that we're within the statutory guidelines. And the thing of it is where we're exempt. That's also important as well. So and also that the last piece of what we know is that desire to garner public support for the facilities through an election. Okay, and that's where this piece of it administratively, and you'll find that out because we have administrative buildings attached to this, the election will be required, and there's some exemptions to that. But we still want that, I believe, and nobody said any different. I've heard some, certainly head nodding and over the months that this is important, that through public, they pay attention to this and they go out and they help us decide that, and I think that's an important piece to you folks as well. So what we want to know, I think this is important. What financial capacity does the city have for funding a building? Those are things we'll need to know. What sources of revenue generation are available to funding a building? Will funding a building limit our ability to fund other projects? This is a pretty important question. Are there alternatives to the relative to the proposed building that will address not only our needs, because we believe there is a need, but is there a lower cost way of constructing a building, and or is there a different design that we could consider that's relative to the cost of it? And is the city legally bound to have an election to construct a public building? Kind of alluded to that already, but it's something we should know and what our options are. So let's start with the financial capacity. And again, I preface this with, I'm not getting into the weeds of the math and the financial structure of things. That's not what we're doing today. I'm hoping that the ask is, and your response will be, yes, let's go to a work session where we'll do this and you'll have those options. But if you look here, status quo, that is a financial snapshot today of what we can do capacity wise. Our current debt services mill, as you well know, is 10.418. A mill is 100,000 plus. We have 97% collection on that 100,000, so it's just right at about that 100,000 because it's just a little over. And right now with capacity, we have 10 million at our disposal. Okay, without doing anything else, the status quo, no changes, 10 million. Okay, that's where you're at. Now that takes into consideration the debt we already have, including exempt debt. Now, exempt debt specifically is things like utilities, sewer, for example, for us, right? It's already exempt. So it doesn't count against somewhat our limit, but we certainly have 10 million in our capacity to pay debt with the current mill assigned, okay, and the other structures we have. This includes converting the 2023 temp notes into permanent financing in 2026 and projecting what we might, our matching funds will be for current projects that we've already committed to, which is the TE, which is the Town Center Connector, Trails and Sidewalks project, and 98th Street Phase 2. Okay. Now, we're going to build a $16.9 million facility, for example. Now we need $325,000 to pay that payment, okay? And that's equivalent to, we are raising from 10.418 to 13.668 mils. That's the equivalent. I'm not saying we're doing that, not proposing that we do that, but these are equivalencies. This is what it equals, right? If it's 100,000 a mil, we need 3.25, right? We need about $325,000 from revenue generating sources. It could be the mill, which is our prime source, okay? And then, of course, if you're looking at $21.5 million building, there's your 5.75 mils equivalent, right, to 16. Now, when you add those numbers up, ladies and gentlemen, in 2017, from then, we reduced this mill rate. As soon as you add that 21.5 million payment at the equivalent of 5.75, it goes right back near to that 2017 mill rate. Okay, if you want me to quote those numbers, I can certainly do it for you. But you understand what we've done. We've reduced over 8 years, and if we just chose a mill change, for example, you're going back equivalent, just math-wise, back to where you were 7-8 years ago, right?
Mills, not bills, correct?
Mills, not bills. Yes,
What about the interest in this note? Are we getting into, you gonna talk about that here in a minute too?
No, not in this particular presentation.
Okay.
We will get into those sorts of things because that's really an unknown factor. We can tell you about what we scored recently, which you all know, right? Where we were, S&P review, all the things that go into this bonding pieces of it. But this includes principal and interest, the 10 million status quo, okay? So if everything stays the same and we just add these, okay, by the time you bond this, you're gonna have to add that interest and principal payment together. And I think that is computed. You saw the data. We'd have to go through some serious data. I don't want to get into those weeds right now if you don't mind, but we'll answer that particular question of principal and interest. What does it cost to make that payment? Okay. Is that okay? Is that satisfactory? Yes and no? 21.5 million, right? There's that 5.75 mils. You need nearly $600,000 in other revenue to pay the payment. So it's really that simple in the sense, okay? Questions, comments, concerned before I move on? Sir.
So when raising the mills, you'll raise the taxes.
Well, mills do equate somewhat to the tax, ad valorem
In an
tax.
economy where everybody's struggling right
Yeah, and again, that's it. And I'm suggesting it's a comparison to the mills. I'm not suggesting you raise the mill. So just to be clear, okay? So there are other ways, right? So perspective wise, keep an open mind because there are other ways to generate this same money. There may be a combination of ways. And that's what we want to do at the workshop. We want to get you in front of this data. Because here's some of it, right? Go ahead and read this right now, right? That's just not practical. It's not a good way to do business. And so what we'd like to do is get this in front of you, get the experts to describe some of these things to you. And again, but in answer to the question, which is what I should do right now, is mills, I'm just equating it to this is what it looks like. But the money can come from other sources, okay? Could be different combination of things. Good, but great question, thank you. Anything else? Moving on. Here are our sources of revenue, because that's what we want to know. What are they? And that's our standard one, okay? The ones. Ad valorem, this property tax, that's our real and tangible property, okay? When we talk about bonds and everything, there are some limits, and we'll talk about that, but what supports operationally the city and its services is ad valorem taxes, right? That's where it predominantly stems from for us specifically, and the finance director has certainly pointed that out in his previous presentation. So sales tax, of course, and those more variable than certainly the property tax. We have a high collection rate of the property tax, pretty standard. If someone has a mortgage, it's pretty standard that if they pay on the mortgage, they're paying their taxes because it's paid through that system. So sales tax, again, it's all about the consumer, right? Where do we get our sales tax from? City sales, city use, and county use. That's typically where we get those three main. Then I'm talking about the pilot. Those are payment in lieu of taxes. These are relative to the industrial part for simplification. IRBs, industrial revenue bonds. And what we do is we abate the taxes for a number of years. These are standard 10. It's a certain percentage, and they pay a payment in lieu of taxes, okay, on that particular property. Say, for example, the one that's just recently been investigated to maybe come off onto the tax rolls pays $218,000 a year on, say, a $38 million property. So we talk about the pilots, that's a source of revenue, but they'll also talk about when they do the conversion back onto the tax rolls, what does that equate to? Because we have to factor that. Does that boost? Does that equal a mill if we have enough of those coming on and that we don't have to raise 1 mill or 2 mills, whatever it might be? So that's a source of revenue. Franchise fees, if they have utilities in our right of ways and that sort of thing, except for VPU, had to get that in. They pay a franchise fee to us, and so we generate revenue that way as well. Gaming revenue, a little unique to our community. It's not as unique as it around the state as it used to be for us, but that's equivalent of about 4 mills. Okay, 400,000, 4 mills. Let's just think of it that way. So that's a good source of. We could have back in the day decided the gaming revenue, no matter what it is, we're going to assign it to debt, for example. But we chose that it's general expenditures. It's part of our revenue come in. And it's part of that factor of just our general fund, okay, revenue that we generate. Fines and other fees and rents. We are a landlord, as you might know, and they pay rent to us. That's a little bit unique, but we have fines and other fees like report fees and whatever they might be. Those fees, associated permitting fees, and of course fines. And so that's one source of our revenue. And then interest on investments. It's been a hot topic for us, right? But in a sense, we do and have generated interest on our money. It's just been lower than expected. If we do some different things, we'll generate more revenue. So that's going to be something new for us. So if we get a full year under our belt one of these days, we might see 100,000, 200,000, 300, whatever it might be. And those, again, equivalent. If you just equate those to a mill, that might help offset some of these expenses. Something we're doing a little different, okay? So those are it. Any questions, concerns, feedback on this particular one? No? Okay. Limitations on other projects. We can do whatever it is, in most cases, that you can pay for. Just like your bills at home, right? Your car, your house, whatever it might be. So you want to buy a new boat, whatever it might be. In any scenario there, you just have to have the capacity to pay. What's unique about us is that we can do things like raise taxes. I like to talk about the mill at our level, but the mill could be increased, right? That generates more revenue and therefore increases our ability to pay. The more debt we pay off, right? The more capacity we have to pay for debt, therefore we can take on more debt, those sorts of things. So in every situation, our ability to pay the debt is our limitation. So if you want a $70 million debt, you just have to have the revenue source is to then pay that. Then we have what that 30% debt indebtedness limit, bonded indebtedness, hard to say.
it has to be a consideration, but the first bullet is our prime consideration. This second bullet about our limit is not all that a strong consideration. And the reason is there's a number of ways to exempt our debt. Number one, if we're paying for an entire sewer system, it's utility, it doesn't go towards our debt, right? If, there are other sources, there are other ways legally. I talked about our legal kind of considerations that we might have. Chartering out, for example, of certain debt related to buildings, we could exempt that debt because it's different in two places. And some of those laws only apply to cities of the second class, which is not uniformly applied. Therefore, as we're learning these things, we can charter out. And this we're not reinventing this wheel. This exists in municipalities all over Kansas. Okay, so we could exempt some of this debt. So the first part, that first bullet is what is more concerning. What are we willing to pay? How much is it going to be? And where do we find the revenue to pay for? Okay. Questions, concerns, feedback? Good. Alternatives to building the building. I almost put up there, you don't have to build a building, but remember the purpose, remember the need, remember the support, those kinds of things. Remember the money spent. We should do something, right? And so that's really our ask, is to go to this work session to say, hey, these might be some examples that we might want to consider to do something, do good things. It's just that easy, right? Do good things. Remodel, update, upgrade facilities we have. Set a cap limit on the money. So for example, we know status quo, we don't change a darn thing, and we have 10 million at our disposal. We say, well, 5 million, we're going to upgrade these facilities so they're livable, breathable. People want to come to work in them, and it's a temporary fix for the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that might be. So that's just a scenario that could happen. But looking at these facilities, everybody, the professionals behind me are probably shaking their heads. Oh my goodness, how could he say that? It could be throwing good money after bad. That's what we have. We've deferred maintenance has caught up with us, folks, and that's where we're at. We have to look at other alternatives. Build in sections and years. The design of our building is not so easy to do this. We've come a long way, and a lot of discussion about the design of this building and its kind of corridors that connect internally, right? So you might have to build walls where you normally wouldn't, right? If you build in sections. There are consequences, good and bad, to all of these kind of suggestions, but there are alternatives. And the only thing I'm just presenting to you is when we come to a decision, we may have to consider alternatives, right? Depending on what we want to spend and how we can afford to spend it, right? Explore a different building design. It's a big building. It houses a lot of stuff. And that's, of course, what was our purpose, right? Consolidate as much as we can for the money we have now and what we're willing to fund. But we can consider a different design. We can ask our folks to go back, our team to go back, and then come with a different presentation of a different design. It may not be as efficient, may not be as connected, but maybe it is a better alternative, and that it gets into a cost that we can kind of stomach. Maybe that's what we do. Okay. Build a smaller version of the proposed building. What we've done is we knew there was a need, and the reason we know there's a need is we commissioned these professionals to go out and to do a building survey of our needs. And they did so. And they said, oh, by the way, this is what you need now, and this is what you need based on your projected growth for the future. So you're building a building not for right now, but for 40 years, right? And do we expect Edwardsville to be the same, in 40 years? And the answer is no. Maybe 5 years, 10 years, not even, right? So we just don't know. But are we then putting an expansion on a 5-year council in the next 5 years or something like that? And when we've already we've bonded this and did these other things. Build a combined police and fire facility and remodel an administrative facility. Always an option. You can look at these other buildings and say, okay, well, we know the commercial mobile home isn't adequate for the police department. We know the fire station isn't just adequate for the future of the fire station. We can combine those two and eliminate the admin piece. Look at this building admin, look at the fire station admin, look at other alternatives. Okay? Anything on that? Please, sir.
I agree with no remodeling. This building, if you started remodeling this building and it came in at $1.2 million, it's going to be $3 million. All you got to do is take the tiles down and see how bad the roof deck is. So you're basically taking it down to the steel skeleton, starting over. Remodeling is always more expensive than building new. Always.
Yeah, and I know our professionals have got it that way, but I think it's my responsibility at least point it out. And then we have these kind of just in the weeds discussion when we need to and say, is that really an option? Is putting $1 million in this good money for, does it last 5 years? Or is it $1 million, but it's really 3? Those are the questions that we need to answer with these other opportunities to meet. Okay, anything further on this? Sir.
This new building plan, what happens to the existing fire station?
Well,
That's a perfectly good building.
yeah, yes and no. Yes, that is and the mayor can verify, and our professionals behind us, our team has said this several times. I think what we have to do is, and it's not necessarily an answer for you, is we have to discuss what's the purpose of that building within this project. If you leave it vacant, North Fire Station. If you leave it vacant, right? Well, what I'm saying is that building just got ignored maybe down here at the core, right? It just, okay, it sat up there. It is the way it is. You know, we did different purposes and it just really didn't serve its good purpose, right? So I guess my point there is if we don't include some sort of even conceptual plan, some idea for that building, what does it do? Is it just storage and it's a brown storage building, right? Is it wasted space? Could we do other things with it? A recreation center, you know, maybe it could be basketball. You know, whatever it might be, there's lots of considerations for you to decide and include that in some way, if not more than just if not as simple as a plan. Like we think it would be a great restaurant. Okay, that could be your statement. Then the plan is, how do we strategize to get it there? It could be a great extra fire storage place. I don't know based on design that we need that, but it could be used for another purpose. So that would be the next piece is when we say green line, when we do that, that should be a part of this discussion unless you have a different take on it. Okay?
It's a perfect place for the public work building. It's out of sight. If the public doesn't see it like we do up there, and it wouldn't take much to turn that into a public work building. I mean, building one up there is throwing good money at a bad project. It's just not big enough, you know?
You mean the North Station?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So again, ideas for consideration, and I think there's a time that we can really have those discussions and, you know, don't mean to overuse the word, but get some consensus about what it should be. And then we'll put the money in it in the sense of if we say X, then we ask them to go design X. Put those factors together, the financial pieces and the architectural pieces, right? And what we're going to do. Okay. Any more on that? We will have a session where we're going to generate a lot of ideas, and then we want to hear them. Nobody wants to be stifled, so we'll be excited to hear them. Okay. Well, the election piece is, if you have city, just think of it, library and city facilities, and you're going to use bond money, you have to have an election. It's pretty simple. Okay. And we have a strong desire to do so. If you utilize what they call a public building commission, which is something the council establishes, it becomes a municipal corporation, and those officers that are on that board are the city council. Okay. And the purpose of this is becomes a municipal corporation that then can bond money without an election. They can construct, they can buy property, they can do all the things without the election piece. And what the city would do, separate from this commission, is we would pay the bond payment as a lease payment to the municipality, and therefore it doesn't go towards our indebtedness. So that is statutorily structured that way. I don't know when they did it. I have to look at the date, but somebody figured this thing out where a city can create a municipal corporation. They call it the Public Building Commission, and it only seats when there is a facility question that they have to answer, right? About do we want to build this building or that particular building, whatever it might be, or bond related to facilities, okay? And no election is required if bonds are used for public safety facilities specifically, or say, for example, you decide to remodel this building, okay? It's the frame up for that is very similar to what Bonner Springs did. They didn't go for election. They had a facility, administrative facility. They rehabbed, remodeled. They built a new police station, and prior to that, as you know, they built a new fire station. Okay, this is how they did that in the sense public safety buildings don't require an election, And if you remodel the facilities you already own, it doesn't require. Okay. Anything on that? Pretty simple. So this is our wrap up. Our ask is very simple. Would there be interest, Mayor, in having this retreat, this work session, as soon as Monday, as late as next Thursday, that we could schedule our team to be and make that a priority and meet in our training center and get the documents before you and some of these ABC choices. And then we can come back towards the 10th or as late as the 24th. I realize I'm putting that out there. It doesn't seem so urgent if I'm saying the end of the month, but July 1 is really our truly comfort level of a cutoff, a yes or no, or let's put this on pause. Another pause means more money in the future. It really truly does. It may not, if it's a no, it's a no. I'm okay with that. If it's a yes, then we have a lot of work to do to get us to November. Because I don't think these opt-out options are really what you want to explore, but we certainly have to tell you about them. So.
I think that would be beneficial. I feel like the governing body has a lot of information to digest and really consider, and a work session would give us the ability to have more of that roundtable type of discussion to get more of a comfort level and feedback and just input from the governing body. I think it's important that we do everything we can to keep this financially within reason, make sure we're being great stewards of any tax dollars. And then, of course, I've been an advocate of letting the people who will be paying for this have their voice in it all along. And so I'm very much for the residents having their voice in that election piece. But I think the work session, if we can maybe target Monday evening, since we probably mostly have Monday evenings available, would be beneficial if that works for everyone.
We don't need a motion for that, do we?
Is that considered a special meeting? Do we know? Yes.
Yeah, if I assume the entire council's going to be there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a open meeting.
Motion, yeah.
Usually, if we have a special meeting when we're not in session declared, we have to sign the paper to call that meeting. I would presume we can call that meeting now without I think on a motion in a second, right? Is anybody disagreeing?
No,
Procedurally.
Okay.
So what I'm suggesting is usually when we call special meetings, we're not in session. So here you can take a vote. We'll need a motion, a second, and a majority vote to have a special meeting, a work session scheduled for time and date next Monday.
Does that work for everyone generally next Monday evening, or?
Just depends on my
You'll
schedule.
have somebody there? Okay. Yes.
I won't know until probably Friday.
Okay.
All right. Any concern?
Mark, Garrett,
Yeah, does that work?
Oh, yeah, I'm good with
I
that.
can
Yeah.
handle it. That's clear.
make a motion to plan a work session Monday, June 3rd at 6 PM.
Second.
Do we need to add that to the agenda, or is that?
As far as this formal agenda, I don't think so. It'll be in the minutes.
Okay,
So
so I can just call roll.
Call
We have
roll.
a motion
Yes,
of
ma'am.
Councilman Shriver, a second from Councilman Bishop. Will the clerk please call roll?
What was the location? I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, I would say the City Hall training room would be,
City Hall Training Room,
So amended.
at what time did we state?
6
6
PM.
PM,
Councilman
Yep.
Bishop?
Second that too.
Should there be
amended
a subject on that, or is that broad?
I said work session
work session
Concerning.
concerning city facilities.
concerning city facilities.
Second that too.
See what you do when
Will
you
the clerk
distract me?
please call roll?
Mullen,
No,
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Adcox.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So, moving on to item number 5, the city manager report.
And nothing more to report, ma'am. Thank you.
Councilman Adcox, do you have anything for us this evening?
I do not.
Councilman Shriver?
Like to thank all city staff. I don't know who was in charge, probably a group effort. Public Works, Fire Department, everybody that came and helped City Cleanup Day. I think it was a big success. I know this The residents truly, truly, truly love that. That's a day we see more mattresses than we ever want to.
Yes.
You name it, we see it, but it's nice that the city gets cleaned up. And we remind a lot of people that day that August and November, we had the pickup days too, but
Yes.
I know you'll advertise that as well. I'd also like to thank the staff, the Public Works, anybody else who was involved getting the cemetery ready for the Memorial Day. It was beautiful up there. Absolutely beautiful. I know Public Works spent a lot of time. I know our mowing company did a wonderful job. The flags look beautiful. I hope anybody that lives here ever gets a chance to drive through that cemetery because it's really beautiful. I'd like to thank Connie Henry at this point too. Her planter just looks beautiful. She is very proud of that. She does a lot of work. She takes care of that, and I think she deserves that thanks.
Yeah.
And she's done tremendous things for the cemetery throughout many, many years. So with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Moore?
With the council consent, I would like to have somebody issue a statement to the UP Railroad thanking them for activating silent crossings.
Okay.
I know that's not a big issue with a lot of residents, but it is with me and anybody that lives close to these tracks. It's just heavenly to not hear those horns blare for 6 miles.
Yep.
If the council would appreciate or agree, I would like to have that
Agree.
put together. With the sidewalk that we're building on 104th Street, that money was available for that. I'd like to reintroduce the study for a sidewalk from like the north side of the railroad tracks to get people to the dollar store. I think that we need to have some engineers talk to KDOT or somebody to make that a little bit safer for these people. We put one up there for people to walk on. Now we need to put one for people to be able to use. I think we need to put a study on that and maybe issue some funds that direction for that. Codes needs to get a little more active. I can show you a lot of places that need to be cleaned up. I noticed that you're considering the ceiling and the striping of the parking lots, City Hall Community Center, and I think we need to jump on that before we lose those parking lots. Margaret took my fire on the cemetery, but the fire personnel and the police personnel that were up there was really appreciated. They did a good job. White's Lawn did a great job with that, and the veterans that come in and raise the flag. And the chairman of the CPPS board did a really good job. And Mike Thompson being there was another asset to that. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilman Bishop?
Yeah, I got one question. On the manager minutes, are those published online?
No, they're just sent to you directly.
Is there a reason why they're not published online?
I mean, they could be if you want them.
I'm sure the public wants these, maybe wants to
I'm
see
sure they
them.
do.
Yeah. I'm just telling you what I hear, brother. So that's all I got.
Councilman Miller?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the staff that participated in the annual trash drop off. I'm sorry I couldn't participate, but I had to work that day, unfortunately, but hopefully next year I won't have to.
Get your workout in.
Yes. Other than that, I have no more comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, to repeat everybody up here, but not at length, thank you to city staff for both the cleanup day and the memorial service. We've kept our crews busy for a couple of weekends now, and so that's very appreciated. The citywide cleanup served a lot of our residents and did a great effort in some spring cleaning around our community. And then the Memorial Day service was a great tribute to our veterans and those who have sacrificed so much for our country. And so staff, community members, VFW, Representative Mike Thompson all chipped in and really made a great day and great event for them. So thank you for that. Congratulations on our newest CPPS board member. That is a really big deal to have community involvement. That is very important to me, that we have residents who are contributing to the decisions and the vision in our community. And so thank you for being willing to sacrifice your time for that. On that note, have a great night and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.